Hello and welcome. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, one and all. Thank you so much for joining us yet again here at the Light 'em Up Lounge. Thanks for joining us on a very special day. It's our national holiday here in Austria today, and it's a very special day for our guest today. We have Bear Duplisea from El Oso Fumar with us. And Bear, it's your birthday, so on behalf of the entire Light 'em Up family and community, happy birthday to you. Thank you so much for taking the time regardless. We want to be most respectful of your time so you can go and celebrate with the family. But before that, I very much look forward to an inspiring and enlightening conversation. It's been quite a bit of time in the making. I was hoping to get you on for the longest time now, and finally, here we are. So thanks again for joining us. And again, happy birthday, Bear Duplisea.
Well, thank you for the warm wishes, Reinhard. What's the national holiday? I don't want to say like the wrong thing here. So like, what do I say? Do I just say like happy? No, I don't say happy national holiday. What's the holiday actually called?
I don't think if there's like a proper wish for people on the national holiday here. It's more historical and political things
Oh,
uh,
okay.
that we probably don't want to get into all too much.
Well, I hope it's a wonderful day for you as well. Thank you for the warm wishes, and it's my pleasure. It's in
Most
fact
certainly.
my honor to be here with you all today. So thank you so much for the time.
No, Bear, many thanks to you, as I said. For all of you watching, first of all, you guys here at the lounge, you're regulars, friends, and our inner circle. Make yourselves heard, chime in. All your questions for Bear, please fire away. And for everybody joining us on Facebook today, as always, please put your questions underneath the live stream into the comments. We're always checking, and I want to forward those questions to Bear so we can discuss them live here at the lounge. Bear, well, I know usually New Year's resolutions is more like for January 1st, but since it's your birthday, what's the New Year's resolution for Bear Duplisea, and what would you like to accomplish, or what do you hope to accomplish over the next 12 months, both for you personally, but also, of course, in regards to your role in the cigar industry?
Oh wow, that's a great start. That's a great startup question. So, thank I first of all, it's tradition in this country to do New Year's resolutions on New Year's Day. So that's actually throwing me for a curveball here right off the bat. I uh I uh I like the idea of setting goals on your birthday though. I think this actually might be a light bulb moment here for me to actually do that. So I think my goals are pretty simple and kind of when I set out at the beginning of the year on a couple of fronts. I've recently been reading a lot about. I've always thought that I've had a pretty positive attitude about certain things and stuff, but I've recently been doing some really great reading because in my real job, in my real life, I actually have a day job, a 9 to 5, so to speak, and I lead a fantastic team, and we've been talking a lot about positivity and
Mhm.
how thoughts and everything are very magnetic. So if you think about negative stuff, well, more negative stuff's going to start coming in, just begins to pile on. But the same thing happens with positive, right? So it's really great to not stay in neutral or not stay in negative. It's to stay in positive. So even, it's not that fake happy-go-lucky kind of, life, like, oh, everything's peachy keen. I just lost my dog. Oh, my car just broke down. It's all fine. It's not about being fake or having enthusiasm when challenges hit you. It's about taking those challenges and everything and focusing positive energy uh, to come together to resolve it, right? To resolve it, and it could be something simple. It could be something very difficult, and um, I think this very simple thing can be applied to both your personal life too, and that's kind of what my wife and I have been talking about a lot lately as far as like, we have two small children, and they're rambunctious and they're rowdy and they're wonderful children, and they also become very irritating at times too. So it's like any parent, it's kind of frustrating, but we try. My goal for over the next year is to really just focus on all the positive things and the wonderful things that they do, and when challenges come up, it doesn't mean they get off the hook. They don't get ice cream if they do something wrong, but you know celebrating the wins more than, you know, focusing on losses and stuff. Now, as far as the cigar industry is concerned, I'd really like to expand the work that I do just on the show in general. I'm starting to get into, you know, because this is such a small world that we live and work in. I'm starting to have guests on for the third and fourth time. I'm going to be celebrating my 5th anniversary with the show next month.
Bravo.
And so I'm starting to have people on for the third and fourth time, certainly second time guests. Some I've had even more. And it's a really great challenge because I don't want to talk about the same things over and over again. I've been very clear about that on my show, is that I want to talk about things that matter to me. And so like sometimes I may not book a guest that's really hot right now, you know, because, well, everyone else is kind of talking about what I want to talk about. So I really don't have a need to talk to them. And if I see something, I listen, I digest a lot of media. So, you know, sometimes there's like questions that I'm like, I would have really liked to know the answer to that question. Or I wonder how he or she feels about this. And then that's when that's why I'm usually a little late to the table sometimes on guests, or sometimes I'm first. It just depends on what I want to talk about. So I want to continue to challenge myself to have original, you know, very unique conversations that continue to matter to me, because I think that's resonated with my audience pretty well, being very authentic with them. And we center it around the cigar industry, of course, but, you know, I'm interested in the people of it, and I want to continue to do that and build my brand and continue my great partnership with William Cooper, Ben Lee, and Aaron Nielsen with the Cigar Coop Coalition. We make up a great team, and we do some great work too. So I want to continue that as well. So I was really long-winded, but like I said, you caught me off guard with the questions, but I think those are pretty lofty goals.
Bear, that's perfect, and actually a great segue into a couple of things that I want to discuss with you tonight. And I'm so glad that we have you on, because you are one of the truly respected media professionals in the cigar industry. Yet you also mentioned you still work your day job. The cigar industry is not your primary source of income, and I want to talk about cigar media on a more holistic level today, and share a couple of insights of your perspectives, and also why and how you started in the first place. What was the motivation to start El Oso Fumar, in the sense of where did you feel like there is a need for information that hasn't been shared before? There's plenty of podcasts and shows out there. COVID obviously just sped the whole process up and provided many more, and gave people a voice, right? And so did social media in general. But what was the intention for El Oso Fumar to provide something different compared to the rest out there?
Well, first of all, thank you for the humbling words about that you said about me. That's very kind. I think in a lot of ways I still feel like new to the table. You're right. A lot of new entities, new media groups, new shows spawned from COVID. And I remember remarking on this with a couple of my colleagues in media who had been in media previous to COVID at the time. And I was like, this is absolutely the best thing. This is the best thing in the world. And I remember a certain individual, it really doesn't matter who it was, but I remember certain individuals like, why? It's competition. I was like, have you ever viewed me as competition? And he's like, well, no. But you know, this is a lot more. And I said, listen, like this is a whole phenomenon that's taken over the world. And you know, people are making the most of their time, and they're sharing their love of the cigar industry and cigars with, you know, with communities that maybe we've touched, maybe we haven't touched. But at the end of the day, they're bringing people together over why we started in the first place. And at the end of the day, you know, this is all going to go away. You know, the world's going to look different, and it does look different in 2022 that it certainly did in 2019. But the world's going to look different, but there's going to be a sense of normalcy again. And that means people are going to go back to work, and that means people are going to go back on the road, and that means people aren't going to have time to continuously deliver all this content that's being delivered. And who's going to be left? It's going to be us, because we're going to be doing the same thing that we've always done. and people are going to be clamoring for that. So I think um, I think it's terrific. All the things that have kind of spawned from it, and some have kind of lasted, like the Meet the Professor show, which I know you're very very much a part of, and I think what Jeremiah, Jose, and Carlita did. I mean, I think that's one of the best things that's coming down the pike in a long time. And that was because of COVID. I got into this. I got into this a little over 5 years ago with my good friend and partner, Mr. William Cooper, who I know you know. Cigar-coop.com, excuse me, for all your news needs. And it was a very organic thing. We were social media acquaintances. We had never met in person before. And he made a comment about a video I made when I was making videos at the retail location I worked at. He loved the idea. I kind of half jokingly said, I was like, hey, what do you think about me being a guest on one of your many shows? Because at the time, primetime didn't exist. But he was doing like Smooth Draws Radio and Stogie Geeks and a bunch of other stuff. He's always done some really great work across the industry other than his website. And he's like, oh yeah, absolutely. And one thing led to another. He ended up forming his own show, Primetime. Because of my busy schedule at the time, I couldn't make Thursday nights work. And so he's like, well, why don't we just do a special edition on Tuesday? So I guested on the show. I didn't realize I was going to be on for 2 hours. I thought I was literally going to be on for a segment. Little did I know that it ended up being 2 hours. By the end of the show, he was saying, you're going to come back and be a guest again at some point. I said, absolutely. And by the end of the week, I was his partner for special editions. So that's kind of how it started. And then a few months later at Lazona Palooza in Miami, at Espinosa Cigars, hosted by the awesome Eric Espinosa and his great team, and Hector Alfonso and all them. I started my show because I wanted to have candid conversations with people in the industry, and that's what it was.
Because you have a day job, and a lot of people who have their own shows, their podcasts, even their blogs and websites, for them, providing insights into the cigar industry and providing their perspective is a project of passion and love. It's probably a bit of a side hustle or a means to get free samples for some people. However,
it's the only reason we do it, Reinhard.
It's a different way of thinking about your role as a journalist, or it provides you with a different perspective on things, I guess. When we look at that whole ecosystem from that 30,000 feet above perspective, how much of modern cigar media do you consider journalistic? How much do you think is more like a random person's personal experience and what they want to share? And where do you think the two can meet, or where do they have to be strictly separated?
That's a really great question. I think there is a line of people who are journalistic and people who are entertainment. I'll give you a great example of this, and it's myself. I am very much a part of a journalistic enterprise with the Cigar Coop Coalition. When we cover the PCA trade show and other events as a team, we approach it in a very journalistic manner, as best as we can. And that means delivering news, quotes and interviews with key people, delivering facts and information about products, stories, etc., to the end consumer, whether that be fellow people in the industry or the end smoker, as it were. And then there's the entertainment, which I'm also a part of. That's what I view my podcast. El Oso Fumar Takes is very much an entertainment. Yes, news is covered during the course of interviews. Sometimes it's breaking news, sometimes it's old news. Sometimes it's you know, just general information about it. And so there is some journalistic nature to it. But it's very much an entertainment podcast. And I think as a general rule, I think most of the podcasts out there in cigar media fall into my group. They fall into the entertainment group. And that's nothing disparaging at all. I think you can be entertaining, and I think you can be in that realm and still deliver journalistic content with high integrity and a sense of moralistic, you know, I'm trying to think of the word. I need more coffee, Reinhard. That's what I need. More moralistic aptitude and obligation. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a great example. Cigar Dojo is very much a wonderful community of individuals led by Eric Gatormson and his son Jordan Gatormson. They do incredible work. They've built a fantastic community, a great app. Their shows are very entertaining, and that's what they're meant to be. And I don't think they'll be upset by that. But I've seen Eric do interviews, with a high journalistic mindset, and he does an incredible job. He asks tough questions from time to time. He asks great follow-up. And that's something that I think, Coop does really well as well. But that doesn't mean that if you're on one side, you can't play in the other. We have fun on the Coop show too. We're not just a bunch of nerds. We're not sitting in our ivory towers looking down on everybody because we view everything through a journalistic lens. That's not just the way we do it. This is fun. It's supposed to be fun, and we have a good time doing it.
Bear, that's a great perspective, and the reason I brought this up specifically is for numerous reasons. First of all, I think that today the way people consume content in general, whether it's online, television, or traditional print media and everything else out there, things have become a bit intermingled and mixed, where the true role of media and journalism that people knew in decades past has somewhat transformed and been altered by the arrival of social media and online. And it feels like for the young generation today, it's very hard to filter through all the information that is out there. I mean, fake news now has become such a term for most people, because there seems to be an insecurity about information that is out there, and the ability to split facts or opinions from just mere bullshit is somewhat truly challenging now. And then also a second element, and you hit the nail on the head, and many thanks for making that great comment, is like the morality and the integrity that need to be the key element of everything that we do, whether it's journalistic or entertainment, infotainment, however you want to call it. So that's sort of the second part. And I'm curious as to what do you think is our responsibility as part of that ecosystem? Because no matter if you try to provide education or entertainment, I think both sides certainly have a responsibility and an impact on the industry.
Oh, without question, they have an impact on the industry. I think we can view this through a pretty societal lens. As a society, we live in a 24-hour news cycle. There's constant information, and it doesn't matter if it's the whole truth, half the truth, or none of the truth at all. It's just information, and we're in this society where we're constantly gobbling it up, and so there's this incessant need to always be first. And listen, Coop will tell you that I've been guilty of this just as much as anybody else. Like, I'll get him information on a story, and he'll be like, well, what about this, and this? And I said, well, that we can figure that out later. And he says, no, that's not, first of all, that's not how he operates. And what he's taught me a lot with that lesson is that we have this incessant need to be first when we should have this incessant need to be right.
Mm.
you know. And I think there's a balance there, right? Because as a story with larger stories that you're working, or larger stories that kind of affect the industry, there's an obligation to report something, but there's also something to be said about patience. So, like, um, um, take for example, when Altria announced that, oh, you know, I guess it's almost a little over 2 years ago, when Altria announced that they were going to be selling off Nat Sherman, right? Um, that's, we don't know what that means, right? So we don't know, are they selling off pieces, or are they selling off brands? Are they selling off the cigarette portion, opposed to this? There's so many facets to a story, and yeah, we can simply report that information, and I think that's journalistically responsible. Like, hey, this has been announced. But at the same time, I would have rather, if I had been one controlling things, I would have rather had the opportunity to get factual comment from Altria and Nat Sherman to find out what both sides of the story was. What were the agreements? What are some nuances? Because Altria was actually pretty responsible with this. They said they had announced it, but they were actually also giving, and this is a very important part of the story, I thought, was that they were actually giving Nat Sherman the opportunity to solicit offers, which, I mean, who does that in the corporate world? Nobody. Like, they're not going to let someone else dictate the sell. They're going to sell to whoever they want, but they allowed them to. That was a huge part of the story that I think got missed with the initial breaking. And this isn't to disparage anyone that printed that story. That's not what I'm trying to say, but there's a lot of nuance and story behind the story. And again, this goes full circle back to why I do the show the way that I do it, is I'm much more interested in having that conversation with people than having the conversation about the fact that Altria is selling Nat Sherman. Okay, that's a known fact. Okay, so let's talk about some other things around that. That's just what intrigues me. That's what kind of makes my engine go and everything. So to answer your question, I think we do have an impact on this industry. We have an obvious impact on this industry, and I think we have a moral obligation to be right, and not to be first. And sometimes that means we're not first. Sometimes it means we are. But again, I've settled on this after, what I still consider to be a short time in this industry. I'd rather be right than first and even a little bit wrong.
Mm. Excellent point.
Can I ask a favor?
Of course.
So I've yet to light up a cigar, and this is just painfully killing me right now. Would you do me the honor of picking my cigar for me? I have 3 choices for you. This is a tradition I do on my show. I'm sure you're aware of. But so I have a Diamond Crown Maximus Robusto number 5. I have a Tatuaje Tuxtla brown label number 7, and then I also have a Byron Selection 1850, which is one of their newer releases. It's the one that's got a little bit more kick, a little bit more Ligero tobacco in it. So which would you like me to smoke? I'll smoke anything you want me to.
Well, beautiful selection there. I personally haven't tried the Tatuaje and the Byron that you showed, and in honor of one of our dear fellows, a dear brother of mine, who's also an ambassador for Light 'Em Up, Aldo Puncioni, called Smoke and Moses, who is now with JC Newman in the international markets. Would you do us the honor of lighting up the Maximus, who was right?
Yes, absolutely.
I think that will be a great cigar for
thank you
this occasion. So, Bear, to continue that strain of thought that we shared earlier, obviously, since the cigar industry is such a small industry, such a small niche, and there's very, very few true journalistic media outlets, a lot of people rely on the entertainment-focused side hustle, people like you and I who do this because we love it, where do you think is that tipping point when some people actually consider this a job or a profession or a career path and decide to venture into either the cigar industry to some extent, and that could be with a brand or as a retailer or in some other way, shape, or form, but as a media professional. When do you think that flip happens, and what does that a take on the one hand and also bring with it, because it changes the whole dynamic as well, doesn't it?
I would assume so. Since I'm not in that position, I can't comment firsthand on it. But I mean, I would assume that that does change a lot of things. You have to view things through a different lens. But again, I mean, to reflect on someone that I'm close to, Coop, this is a side hustle for Coop too. You know,
Mhm.
Coop has a full-time job, even though it feels like he's on the clock 24/7 for cigars. He's not actually, believe it or not. Um, but the two that I know of, the two media entities that I know of, outside of like the big publications like Cigar Journal, Cigar Aficionado, and everything like that, if we're talking about in the internet sphere, the two that I know about that do this for a living are, again, Cigar Dojo, which I mentioned earlier, and Half Wheel, Charlie Minato Brooks and his team there, are the ones that do it for a livelihood. But even Patrick, who's a partner in Half Wheel, has several gigs. I know he's been in sports and a lot of other opportunities. And Brooks is a phenomenal photographer and everything. So I think there's always going to be some kind of additional revenue streams for us, because this is the joke is, if you want to make $1 million in the cigar industry, start with two, right? You know, this isn't as as much as people like to think that there's a lot of money in it. It really isn't. But for me personally, if I wanted to do this full time, I would just have to make sure that my family was taken care of.
Yeah.
And I would have to view this through the seriousness of a business like lens. I'll give you an example of where this kind of would probably shape my model slightly, is that relationships would have to be increased and be stronger. Yes, I would have to dedicate more time and figure out a way to bring more to my audience than just a weekly show. I would have that obligation to them. But to be very specific though, like some of the things that I guess I let slide for you know, I couldn't allow that to happen if I'm viewing this as a job. You know, some of I've had a number of guests over the years on my show. Some have had to cancel last minute, and it's totally understandable. You know, family comes first. Emergencies are emergencies. Things happen. But I had an incident once where, it was very clear and very apparent that I just was not a priority to that person, even though they committed to being on my show. And that's just something that if I was doing this for a living, that could have severe impact on my family. And I couldn't, that couldn't be allowed to happen. Or happen again with that particular individual. So it's things like that where I would take much more. I would like to think that I'd still be a very forgiving person, and I am, and I'd still be understandable. Emergencies are emergencies. Family comes first. I'll always believe that, whether I'm doing this for a living or not. But I think you have to tighten your screws down in certain points in order to, because things matter at that level.
Bear, what surprises you most when doing your shows and interviews with people from the industry?
It's a good question. I think it's surprising how humble people in this industry really are. There are some characters. There even are some people with a large amount of let's just call it arrogance. But the amount of humility that exists in this industry is pretty rampant. And from people that are very surprising. And I don't mean that disparaging, but like when you think about someone, I mentioned his former company a second ago, but when you mention like someone like Michael Herklotz of Ferry Otago, I'm always humbled by that man, because he's taken my phone call every time I call him. And let's just say, Reinhard, I haven't called him at the best of times sometimes. So, and I'm not talking about in the middle of the night. I'm talking about, I called him the day that the Altria announcement came up. I called him the day that they said, you know what, it's no longer up for sale. It's going out of business. I called him the day that Ferry Otego got announced. And that's not an opportune moment because I just called to tell him congratulations. I was planning on leaving voicemails all 3 times. He picked up the phone and he had at least a 10-minute conversation with me both times. The guy has stuff to do and he takes my call. Like, the fact that I had the opportunity to message Carlito Fuente to do my 200th episode that I had, my 200th take. I think it took all 3 seconds. I don't think I'm exaggerating for him to say, absolutely. Tell me the day and I'll be there. He tells me that I tell him the day. I tell him the day and he's there. Are you kidding? Like there's some pretty amazing humility in this industry from some of the stalwart personalities that have absolutely no time. And when they make time, specifically the fact my show is on Sunday nights. Sunday is probably the only day that these people get with their families. And they still give me 2, 3, 4 hours because I've known to have a really lengthy show. So that's pretty awesome, and their openness, their willingness to have sometimes painful conversations is unbelievable to me. It really is.
Speaking of painful topics and conversations that you sometimes might have with people, are there certain questions that you would like to ask more often, or certain segments of a show where you feel like I would love to hear more about that or dig deeper, but you feel like you can't, or that the cigar media just doesn't pay enough attention to certain aspects that you would like to see covered more often?
Okay. Well, I think there's 2 parts to that. Yes, I wish that more people would learn the art of the follow-up question. I think that's something that's, if you want to hear a criticism of me about the cigar media industry in general, and this even goes to some print publications too. I would love for the art of the follow-up question to be a lot better. I think there's so much that's left on the table, and it might be done intentionally, it might be unintentionally. It's not for me to say because I'm not in the mind of that person who's conducting the interview. But I wish people would follow up more. I try not to leave anything on the table that I find necessarily interesting. There are painful questions that I bring up. For example, one of my favorite interviews that I've ever done was with Alan Rubin of Alec Bradley Cigars, and he had a very very challenging, to say the least, moment in his professional life in this industry. It happened right when he hit his apex, right? He gets crowned the #1 cigar of the year from Cigar Aficionado. This should be his crowning achievement. And in some ways it still is, but I argue that it's actually what I'm about to talk about that's actually the reason why he's so successful today. And he's successful because of his failure. And the questions that I asked and the conversation that we delved into wasn't just about how quality control and everything he took his eye off and production increased without, his ability to keep a pulse on it. And the quality of his precious #1 cigar of the year dipped. His company took a hit, both reputationally and financially, I would imagine. And he rolls up his sleeves and he marches into David Savona's office in Cigar Aficionado and says, I want to tell my side of the story. And when most people say that, it's usually they want to spin it to make it sound not so bad. Man, when I say he fell on the sword, and you can go back and read the article, I mean, he fell on the sword. And he told the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And it was a palpable moment for me as a consumer, because at that time I was not in media. for me as a consumer, that made me an instant fan of his, because he could have pointed fingers, he could have blamed somebody, he could have done anything, but he didn't. And the story carries less of a weight because you see his name behind me. You know, I have a fantastic relationship with that family, but that actually came after that interview too, which is funnily enough, I never thought if Alan would actually interview with me again after that. He said he loved the conversation. I believe him. But it was things that I wanted to know, because I wanted to be in that moment, because it was for me, it was such a moment that resonated with me. And it was painful and it was palpable, but I wanted to understand why, his motivation behind it. I wanted to understand how it affected his family, because he's a father of 2 sons. I'm a father of 2 sons. I'm going to fail much more than I succeed in life. And I want to know how to handle that. So there was a little selfishness on that part, on that line of questioning for me, but I also found it very interesting. And so, you know, I think we are obligated to answer the tough questions a lot of times. And I understand that people's need to not, because they don't want to make people angry. They don't want to upset people. I mean, that's a natural human emotion, but I think it's all in how you frame it. And if you come from a place of, I'm wanting to understand this, I'm not wanting to just, to get nasty and expose you for whatever, then I think it's a place of sincerity. And I think most people will respect that.
Very true. Do you also think that part of the reason why that's the case, or why people are not asking those particular follow-up questions, is sometimes you realize that an interviewer tries to frame the show in a certain way, phrase his questions a certain way to shine the light on themselves, much rather than giving the guest the opportunity to truly shine. And I've realized it takes a lot of humility and respect and understanding of the other person, but also the audience, to take a step back and realize we're just vehicles. We're just humble facilitators, or we're people helping things to evolve and happen, but it's all about you, right?
I absolutely think there's a lot of that in both mainstream media, and I think there are a few examples of that in cigar media as well. And yeah, I mean, I wish there wasn't. I mean, if I could find a channel of clarity to those individuals, both on the mainstream side and on the cigar media side, and if I could talk to them about it for a moment, I'd probably say to them that, like, you know, you're already a part of the story. You don't need to make yourself a part of the story, because you're the one asking the questions. So you're already part of the story. You're already part of the conversation. So there's no reason to, insert yourself even more, or to make it part of you. I mean, case in point, we're on Zoom right now, right? So I toyed with the idea. I toyed with the idea of spotlighting just the person continuously and having myself off completely, so that I didn't pop on. And I talked about it with some people and I got some feedback on it, and I decided not to do that, simply because people cough, people scratch their nose, people stuff like that. And so that's a lot of pressure to put on a guest, to not only, they're already speaking on behalf of themselves or their company, but then to always be in attention and stuff. It's a lot of undue pressure, and it takes away from the natural conversation that I want to develop in my show anyway. So I decided against it.
Very interesting perspective, though. I've never thought about that, to be honest. That could be interesting. Speaking of which, and what you just said, what can we, and I say this as for us as cigar lovers, enthusiasts, but also media people and people with a journalistic mindset, what can we do better?
I think Well, I think better is relative, Reinhard, to be honest. Again, it goes back to your original question, my original point about there's entertainment and there's journalistic shows. And I think you need to decide whatever standard that you have and just reach for it and make it a standard. Don't dip below it at any point, and continue to reach higher for whatever goal you want to, ascertain. So I think I think the one thing that we have a responsibility to do is to, is when we're certainly at fault with something, or if there's something that we've certainly done wrong, I think we need to, this just in general as humans, I think we need to apologize for it. But if we're doing the course of our job and there's no malice behind something, it's just part of our obligation as a journalist, whether from the entertainment perspective or for the journalistic perspective. But if we have genuine and sincere intent behind, our actions, questions, etc., I don't think we need to apologize for it. As long as there's not malice, there's no reason to apologize, and there shouldn't be any regrets on anybody's part. I mean, that might be a little idealistic from my perspective, but that's kind of my take.
I most certainly shared that with you 100%. And I loved the fact that you opened the show today with that thought of positivity. And I feel like that kind of goes back there and speaks volumes about your intent and what you carry in your heart. So that's greatly appreciated. Bear, let me welcome Macy Hansen, our dear resident lawyer and trusted fellow here at the Light 'em Up Lounge. Macy was rushing to get on the show, and I'm sure he's loaded with questions for you. So, Macy, the stage is yours.
Do I need to have my lawyer present, Macy? What's going on?
Your lawyer will be better than my lawyer. This lawyer just lost in Florida yesterday. It's got to appeal. Sad story there, folks. Bear, I'm also #1 El Oso. My wife's from Colombia, and by the way, hates El Oso Fumar. She says it's got to be El Oso Fumado or something else. She critiques the grammar of your name. I tell her it's beautiful, but just to let you know, you're creating strife in my marriage, Bear.
I'm deeply sorry about that, Macy. Tell her that there's again, to the previous question, there's no malice behind that. I do apologize for causing strife in your marriage. Just tell her it's exactly the way that I grew up. I'm the perfect complement to English and Spanish. I'm half Mexican and half not. So I grew up on the border in Texas and El Paso. And so we didn't speak Spanish. We didn't speak English. We spoke Spanish.
Check this out, Bear. You and I, are you ready just for weird show and tell? This is my Sun Bowl ticket. I'm an Arizona State undergrad.
Yeah.
So I love the Sun Bowl Stadium. I've had some great nights and some really bad following mornings in El Paso going down to Juarez.
I bet. I believe
I both recommend it and don't recommend it highly. But also, I want to bear you. I first of all want to tell you, sir, this is my Pedro Martinez rookie card I bought in Dominican from a cigar salesman.
Oh man,
who's the greatest negotiator ever. He would not give me a price; he would just reject me. And I mean, they were selling Oro Blancos for $800, so they didn't mess around. And I'm going to fly through this. I am the Bear Duplisea #1 super fan. You may know me from my harassing you on the internet. Basically,
no, absolutely,
Facebook.
Yeah. I wouldn't call it harassing, but yes.
And you and Reinhard together on the same video. Let's just say it's better than Levitra, everything, all those combined. I can't tell. I'll pay $4.99 a minute for that. I mean, that's how good it is. Cigar wise.
TMI makes
it. Bear, you also, people don't know this. I'm also a #1, maybe #2 behind you, Bear, Paul Garmirian super fan. Mm-hmm. I learned about Paul Garmirian from Bear Duplisea. This is my ashtray. I just want to show you, since I'm just bragging. This is the best cutter you'll ever use, 50 rings, Paul Garmirian cutter. If you don't have one, you should. I like the green. That's my color. I got a little coriander honey in here. I do want to ask you about honeys and coffees.
Sure.
These are my favorite cigar books. I do want to ask if you have any, includes Didier's new one. By the way, if y'all have not bought Didier's book, my God, it is so much better than I expected. The illustrations are amazing. The information in the addendum. I want to grow tobacco in Colombia. That's my dream. I want to be the Green Acres guy. I do that, later on. The information in that book is so good. Didier Hugenval, I'm sorry, but you wrote perhaps the greatest cigar book ever. It's there. I got Hacker's book. By the way, Hacker's an Arizona State guy. The second edition says he smoked his first cigar at Arizona State. So
There you go. That's a nice correlation.
Thank you. This is not my signed Garmirian. Garmirian sent me a sign. That's how nice of a guy he is. So wrote him a note, but and I've got Rothman's in there, but I just may never get to talk to you again. Oh, and check this out. This is a Roger Clemens. I know you're a Red Sox fan. That one was for you. Save that for you.
Oh, there we go.
So anyway,
that's awesome.
Now we
when did you get? When you were like, have you had it for since you were a kid?
Yeah, I was back in Arizona visiting family. My dad sadly's Alzheimer's, all that was down there, and these were my greatest hits from looking through old boxes. I'm in Jackson, Mississippi, so I got a Coach Prime, but on the Yankees.
Oh wow.
They're gonna game days coming to Jackson, Mississippi this week, by the way. So
yeah.
I won't be there, but watch for Jackson. Hopefully they have water. Got a Barry Bonds. I'm an ASU guy on the Pirates. Got Brett Favre in Mississippi before he still stole the welfare money. And true. Anyway,
come on. You're a lawyer, Macy. It's allegedly stole.
Yeah, allegedly. And the lawyers that I battled who represented Wells Fargo are the lawyers doing. So we'll see. They've got some power. Good luck. That's the honeypot they dipped into. Anyway. Okay, real cigar question. Sorry, everyone. Couple of them. Couple challenges I have for you. And I've thought about these for 2 weeks since I saw that you were going to be on the show. And we can go through one by one real quick, or I can give all three. You might be able. First, Bear Duplisea gets a 150 count Dream Humidor, the Macy Dream Humidor. I didn't do the wardrobe check. I was supposed to put on my Diamondbacks cap for you, and then put on an Ole Miss cap for Ben Lee. Tell Ben Lee howdy toddy. I don't know if he's watching. I will. Howdy toddy, Ben Lee. So you got 150 Dream Count Humidor. We can go through what would you fill it up with? Is one question. Also, I like to ask this one, the Bear Duplisea cigar had your dream team cigar, you could pick your blender, what's in it, sky's the limit, who would make it, who do you think would want to be your blending consultant too, anything like that. I'm sure you've thought about it. Where would you, I know it's a tough one, where do you think contenders maybe have it made? And then I need to get back to writing articles for the Light 'em Up forum here, the platform he has. It's going to happen, folks. Just working on it, I promise. Do you have any article topics? You're just, such a great mind in this. What are some feature things? What are some areas that maybe come to your mind that, damn, I wish someone would write an article, blog post, look into this, or just write something about it. Thank you for your patience. I'm on mute now, I promise.
All right, so let's start with let me clarify the question on the 150 count humidor, because I like that one. So am I filling it up with just one cigar? Or am I filling it up with
you're getting wild. You're doing whatever you
want. Oh man. Okay.
Don't pick 100, you can give general parameters. I'd actually like to hear all 150 one by one, but
you should have given me some lead. I would have done that for you, Macy. If you give me some lead time, I would have picked 150 cigars, for sure. I think, wow, that's a really tall order. I think there's some standouts, and I'm probably going to miss some cigars. But I think there's some standouts that I think that I would put into that 150 count humidor. I still think that the best cigar.
You are the palate. People may not know this. I just want to be clear.
Yeah,
Bear
that's what people called me.
The palate. I believe it was a 13 on 13 challenge. Sorry.
Yeah, it was it was in a bucket in a 13. I went 7 for 7 in the streak, and then I missed the 8th one, and then I got the rest consecutively. So, but but yeah, that's what my former colleagues at Michael's used to call me. So apparently I can taste a lot of things. So, but on the 150 count humidor, I think there's a couple of standouts that I probably would know just for the sake of entertainment. I think the best cigar that Padron has ever produced is actually their 46th anniversary, their Maduro. I know people like the 45th, people like the 50th. All great cigars. There's nothing wrong with them. This is the problem when you start picking stuff. People are like, oh no, the 50 is better. Okay, well, that's what you think. I think the 46 is the best they've ever made. And I really like it. And so that would be the 46 is the one that I would actually I would invest some of my humidor space for. I think I also adore the La Flor Dominicana Chapter 1. I think it's a cigar I don't smoke enough of, just because I think it's still very special to me. I think Lito and his son, specifically Tony Gomez, is the one who really was the brain behind that and the blend behind that. And I thought he did a phenomenal job with it. It's a cigar that I enjoy absolutely every time. It's terrific. My Sunday mornings are always filled with the same cigar. My cohort on
Espinosa
Cigar.
Habano?
No, actually, close. So you got the wrapper
okay.
right. You got the wrapper right. You got the wrapper right. The Espinosa Habano definitely going to have some space in my humidor as well. That's a Bear Duplisea staple. But my Sunday mornings are always filled with the same cigar. My cohort on Cigar Coop Coalition is Aaron Nielsen. He smokes the same cigar every morning, which is the High Clerk Castle Victorian from Foundation. That's the cigar he's smoked every morning for the last 5 years. Every morning, he hasn't missed one. My Sunday mornings are filled with the Herrera Esteli Habano. That's been my morning. I've always called that cigar my Sunday morning. I've smoked that every Sunday for probably the last 10 years. I'm not on the streak of 10 years. I've missed a couple Sundays. Yeah, that one right there. You nailed it.
Which Vitola?
I'm definitely a Robusto Extra guy. But I'll smoke any Vitola. I do like the Pyramid too. I think it's fantastic.
I know you typically don't like pyramids. We don't have.
You're absolutely right.
I do want to argue with you about that. I also want to argue with your company ratings on Coop because Davidoff should have been #1. I was that guy. But
we can certainly have that discussion. I think and to continue with that, Espinosa Habano will definitely have some humidor space in it. Davidoff. So to your point about Davidoff, and not just because you mentioned him, Macy, but the Davidoff Grand Cru, I say that cigar is like medicine. I was down in the Dominican a few years ago, and let's just say my stomach wasn't feeling the best of sorts one morning, and the hosts said, "Hey, would you like a cigar, Bear?" And I said, "No, I'm probably not." And he's like, "Hey, why don't you have a Davidoff Crown Cru?" And I was like, "You know what? That sounds good." And I lit up that cigar, and I never felt better. I'm
going to do that this afternoon. I've had one of those mornings because of the Florida thing. I'm going to do that. I actually, and I'll let you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Give it a try. Davidoff Grand Cru. It's like medicine. I'm not a doctor, so nobody take that as medical advice.
It still actually might be cheaper than pharmaceuticals in the United States, even though it's Davidoff, which is
that's true. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think those are some pretty big standouts. I mean, my last few years #1s, the Dissident Rave, the La Barber Ricochet Crew Mexisol, the Christoph Vengeance, all fantastic. Cigars that were #1 on my lists, and I would have to dedicate some space to them because I think they're phenomenal cigars. The Tatuaje Escasos, I think is also straightforward. A cigar that kind of gets lost to, I think kind of got lost for a while, and then it's had like a renaissance in the last few years, is the original, and I'm smoking the Maximus now, which I love a lot, but the original Diamond Crown, I think it kind of went by the wayside for a little bit, not in terms of quality. It was the same cigar, but I think people forgot about it. And then it kind of experienced a renaissance, thankfully. I think it's just terrific cigar that you got to have. The Julius Caesar is also terrific. I absolutely think that the Gatekeeper from Alec and Bradley is a must-have in every humidor. It's a terrific cigar. The cigar that I really like from them, that's my favorite, and it's now out of commission, is the Mundial. So if I could find any of those and put those in my 150 count, I would definitely do that as well.
I think that's only in the CRA pack. is where
Yeah.
I think I had that. Yeah.
Well,
Which is a great value.
well, they
thing
did. They
and a good
discontinued it.
cause.
So if it's part of the CRA pack, I need to do it. I'm a lifetime member, so I guess they stopped sending me 5-packs once they've gotten all my money.
Actually, I need to renew. Good reminder, good plug out there.
Yeah,
I just got
yeah,
my
absolutely.
renewal
Join
email.
CRA. It's a fantastic organization. I was pleased to become a lifetime member. That wasn't a dig at all. So, but let's move on to your second question because I think it's also pretty interesting. But those are some
Just real quick,
standouts.
Ben Lee. Am I on camera? Ben Lee.
He sees it. I don't know how happy he's going to be about it, but he sees it. But he was at Iron Maiden last night, by the way. So he was having fun last night too.
He probably needs a Davidoff Grand Cru this afternoon.
Probably. So the question was, what tobaccos and who would I get to blend my cigar? Is
Yeah,
that
the Bear Duplisea Dream Cigar. No, just money's not really just your dream. Just what do you think would make you happiest? Or I mean, anything. You can blend Cuban with non-Cuban, which is probably what I would do. I mean, just get wild.
I've always said I would love to see what some of today's master blenders could do with that kind of combination. I like at a commercial level, not just like, not just fucking around or something. I think that would be really cool. I'm gonna pull one out of the history books, and I'm gonna make a lot of people unhappy because they're expecting me to like name somebody today. And with all respect to the greats and stuff like that, since you didn't establish any rules, I'm gonna take Frank Yaneza.
I knew you're gonna, and I have some of those because I have a box of the so-called.
You got a box of them?
Cigars. Yeah, Cigar Page sold them. I got them for $3 a piece. And I got bundle of 20 for $60. No shipping, no sales tax.
Do they still have them?
No, they went
Damn.
quickly, but I have I have 19 of them. I smoked one. It was great. And if you want some, reach me out. I have 19 Frankenazas.
Oh my gosh. I thought that cigar was terrific. And I think what Frank did in this industry is incredible. 100 years old, 100 years young when he left us too soon. And yeah, I think Frank would blend me a fantastic cigar. It's interesting. My palate's changed over the years. Like many people a few years ago, about 10 years ago, I think I fell into what was the trend, which was the powerhouse cigars. The more power, the more Ligero. If you can put quadruple Ligero on top of like quintuple Ligero, that would be really good. Thankfully, I matured and found that there's a whole different world of cigars outside of just powerhouse tobacco. That being said, I still like a little oomph in my blend. So I would probably want I would like still some Ligero in there. I do appreciate people like Dion and Rainier Lorenzo who don't use much, if any, Ligero in their blends. But I think that would be really good. I would love to see what Frank Yaneza could do with the tobacco that's being aged by Nelson Alfonso's family for Atabey and Byron. I think that would be really cool because they're doing stuff with aging in Costa Rica that like a lot
Have
of
you
people
had those? Sorry, I wouldn't. Maybe sorry to interrupt on that. Have you had any of the white oak aged cigars? And if so,
yes, and again, they're very unique. It's a very unique experience, and a lot of people use that terminology to like fluff something to say, oh, it's not very good, so he just used the terminology unique. No, I didn't say that. It's very unique. It's very different. When I say unique, when I describe cigars, like Florida Sun-Grown is an example of this. Florida Sun-Grown tobacco is very unique because it doesn't taste like anything else, and by that nature, it's also very polarizing. People either like it or they don't, and you can say the same about anything.
The Jeff, is that you're talking about the Jeff Borshowitz?
Yeah, I'm talking about the Jeff Borshowitz project with True Estate. But mostly the tobacco that he uses. Davidoff did a great job. The FSG, the Florida Selection 2018 was phenomenal. Oh my God, that was so good. That was a great cigar. But
sorry, real quick. Yeah. Sorry, and where would you with factory? Sorry, and I'll shut up.
Since I get to pick anything, I would just take Frank and I would drop him right in the middle of Chateau de la Fuente and tell him to go at it. So if I got to pick anything. Maybe Paul Garmirian could stop by and, interview him, while he was doing it. That would be fantastic too. So to bring full circle to our original question too, some of our original question from Reinhard, like that, Paul Garmirin does an excellent job of interviewing people, and he interviewed someone for his book, Zeno Davidoff, for that Gourmet Guide to Cigars, and I thought he did a terrific job. So, but yeah, I would like to see something done with that kind of wrapper tobacco. I would still like some oomph behind it. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if that would work. It'd probably turn out to be a terrible cigar. But I think you put all those components together, and I think it's Frank Yaneza, so he could honestly put something together. But here comes somebody else on the show that's probably offended that I didn't pick him.
Jose, welcome, buddy.
Bear, first of all, happy birthday.
Thank you, Jose.
I wrote to you early this morning.
Thank you, sir. How are the
Bear,
Ducks?
the Ducks are all good. First of all, I've known you for many years, before you even had the blog. At my Peacock shop, anytime I would be in town, we would do those short videos. And I have to say, to me, you're one of the most talented media guys, not only because of the way you do your show, but I think you have one of the best palates, without a doubt. Also with my good friend Ben Lee, and also with Seth, guys, that you are three guys that if I would need an opinion on the cigar, I would get it from you. Bear, let me ask you this: what you have a different way, because you look a lot into history, you look a lot into facts. Do you think, in your opinion, and we never mention, who or what side or whatever, do you consider that a lot of people that do these interviews just don't do the research? They come up with a lot of stupid things. I've seen them get into arguments with the owner, with the blender and all that. I don't see it as a disrespect. I see it more as really not researching and doing what you have to do. What's your opinion on that?
Well, first of all, Jose, thank you for the well wishes on my birthday, and you humble me with kind words every time you see me. It truly is a humbling experience every time someone of your stature lays a compliment at my feet. So thank you very much. It's still very awe-inspiring when I hear you say nice things about me. But to your question, I absolutely think that everyone that there are people who don't do research, and I think it is. I'll disagree with you. I think it is disrespectful, and the reason I can say that with such boldness, Jose, is that I'm human, and there are times where I don't have the opportunity nor the time to do the research that I would like for some shows. And there are times that I don't go as in depth as I want to go, because I don't have the research behind me. And I tend to, a number of my guests will tell you this, I've apologized to them before the show starts, because I do feel like it is disrespectful to them slightly. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to stay away from this topic, miss, because I haven't been able to do the research, and it would be disrespectful to you to kind of pursue a line of questioning that I don't know anything about. I think they appreciate me being candid. But that being said, I still find it to be disrespectful. I mean, I have witnessed some times where people get into fights with people. I think it's very sophomoric and trivial. I think it does nobody any good. I don't think it's entertaining. And I think it does a disservice to the industry if we're going to be so bold about it. But yeah, I mean, I'll kind of stand there. I think it is disrespectful for people who don't do adequate research, and try to pass themselves off as they have. I think that's insulting.
Oh, what I meant, disrespect. I mean, they might think it's not disrespectful, but it is disrespectful. And I think that just people that, if you really want to have a name in media and you want to do a good job, not everything is out there, but there's basically the main things you could ask about: the beginnings, what they're thinking, what they're blending, what they're trying to do, what are they trying to achieve, all those things. They just don't have a clue. And that's why, to be honest, there's some shows that I don't even watch anymore, because it's not worth it, getting totally disinformation. But anyway, great to see you as always. Happy birthday, and
thank you, Jose.
Take care.
Thank you, sir.
Bear, if I may follow up on Jose's question there for a little bit, because I think it's highly interesting. It's sometimes tough to find adequate information in the cigar industry and around it, in particular with certain people. I feel like that's probably part of the reason why on numerous shows you will hear the same questions over and over again, because it's an easy one if you don't know anything else to ask, like, what was your first cigar that you ever smoked, right? Or how did you get into X, Y, and Z. What do you use for your research, and what are, without giving away any secrets, obviously, but what are some of the things that you like to tap into and tag into in order to get more in-depth information and come up with questions that haven't been asked before?
No, I don't think I don't think there's any secret to my formula at all. I think it's pretty simplistic in its sense, but like, I typically start with a couple of ideas of, again, questions that I've heard, like you said, people who've said, oh, this was my first cigar experience. And then they move on to something else. Well, maybe it was something about their cigar experience that I was like, that would have been like, this would be interesting to keep talking about. Like, I'll give you an example. It wasn't her first cigar experience, but it was something very early in her childhood. It was a very generic question that was asked of Cynthia Fuente once in an interview. And I heard it, and I was like, I would be really interested, and I can't even tell you what it was. I just remember it was Cynthia. And I was like, hey, and I asked like the follow-up question, like, what happened? For all intents and purposes, what happened next, right? And what followed was a wonderful answer, and what we got was a beautiful, vignette of her beautiful childhood with her family. And I thought that was very, very interesting. So, I mean, the formula is simply this, Reinhard. I take bits, I start with, big pieces, like, hey, I need to talk about this. I need to talk about this. And then I kind of go to the next level of, I want to know this, and I want to know this. And then I kind of go into like, well, this would be interesting, and this would be interesting. And during the course of the conversation, I'm actively listening to the person I'm talking to. Like, I'm not checking boxes here. Kind of like today's conversation. It's been very organic, and you've followed, you've had some follow-up questions. We've brought on Macy and Jose, and they've asked me some questions as well. And so it's had this very organic kind of context, around it. So I think as long as you're paying attention to the person, and you should be, you can actually find out some really cool and exciting stuff if you just say, hey, what's next? Like, what happened next? Like, because I think that's where some of the beauty and story lies. So I don't think there's really any secret to my formula. I go back and I listen to different interviews. I go back and read different articles. Whether in Cigar Aficionados, Tobacco Business, Cigar Journal, Cigar Press, Thor, I think, has one of the most underrated publications in the business. I think he's done tremendous stories, from everyone. His very first interview, I believe it was Carlito Fuente. I know Carlito was featured in his first issue, but I think that was his first interview. It might have been Pete Johnson, I'm not sure, but I believe it was Carlito, which is, wow, how do you start there? Like, where do you go from that? But he's done it. And but I think he's got one of the more underrated publications. And I just go from there, and I'm like, hey, this is a really great, tidbit that doesn't get brought up much, because it might have been something said, Reinhard, that, Jose Blanco might have answered a question, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when he was with La Aurora or Hoya de Nicaragua or something like that. And I'm like, hey, I've always wanted to ask you this, or it doesn't get talked about for whatever reason. I think that's the beauty of conversation, is you can find those really great stories. And I've gotten that commentary a lot on my show, like where my guest is often like, man, I can't believe you remember that. Or I can't believe, it's been a long time since I've even thought about that. And it makes for a beautiful conversation.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Steve, you had a question, I believe. I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I posted in the chat, but I wanted to ask in person. What do you think authoritative media that has a lot of integrity can do collectively to counteract the misinformation from those who don't?
What can authoritative media with integrity do collectively to counteract misinformation? I'm not, Steve, I'm not trying to cop out on the question at all. So please forgive me. And if I'm not answering the question, just ask it a different way. I have an enormous lexicon that makes it sound like I'm smarter than I really am. So, but I would say, just to kind of go back to one of my original points, is just be right. You know, stand for being right. And, you know, if that means you're second or third or last, that's okay, as long as you get it right. And because if you're right all the time, or if you're right 95% of the time, people are going to come to you for the truth. And again, I'd rather be right than, you know, just a little bit wrong. If that, I mean, I hope that's not a cop-out answer, Steve.
I was just thinking, I know Eric founded the Cigar Media Coalition a long time ago, and I'm wondering if you think maybe something like that would be helpful to improve the quality of information that's being distributed.
That's a really good question. I don't feel entirely qualified to answer that. I can't, in terms of speaking for other individuals. It was formed, and I guess it went defunct before my time as a media member. So I don't know the reasons why it was initially formed. If that was one of the reasons, and I'll take your word for it if that's what it was. I imagine so. And I'm not sure why it kind of folded, to be honest, either with you. I wish I had more of a comment for you there. But I think the idea of I think informally, I think we do. I mean, you know, I'm friends with a lot of people in cigar media. I don't view them as competition. You know, we critique each other. We give each other advice. We help each other out. We network together in a lot of spaces. So I mean, the ones that the ones that I hang out with, and the ones that I know and that I consider close friends, you know, are people that, you know, at least from where I sit, think very similarly to the way that I do. In most parts, we have different styles, which makes us all very unique and makes it fun. But I haven't really given a thought to a forming of another coalition. I mean, I'm open to the concept, but I'm not sure to what end that would suffice, but or what that would do as a whole.
Sure. I have a lighthearted question for you from Joe Grow, who was watching on Facebook, and so was Cynthia. By the way, she was very happy that you remembered that very special anecdote and little episode there. So, blessings and best wishes from Cynthia as well, and all the other people joining us today. And so many congratulations on your birthday. But Joe was telling me to please inquire with Bear about your love for Chevy Chase and Christmas Vacation.
Oh God, Jesus. Wow, this is going to come up on every show, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, for the uninformed, and for the people that I might offend, I apologize. I do not apologize to Chevy Chase. I don't like Chevy Chase in the slightest. I think he is a fraud of the American comedy spectrum. I think he has fooled people for generations into thinking that he's funny, and he's not at all. He's an absolutely atrocious person in real life. You know, a lot of celebrities are. So like people are probably thinking like, well, a lot of celebrities are assholes, Bear. What's the problem with this one? And it's just that I just don't find his comedy structure funny. I don't think he's entertaining at all. I think it's cheesy and over the top in a sense that's just not funny. You know, Charlie Chaplin was over the top and he was funny. It was slapstick. It was different. The Three Stooges were over the top. It was slapstick and it was funny. And Chevy Chase stands on the shoulders of geniuses like that, and he tries to just be cute, and it's just not entertaining. don't find him remotely talented whatsoever. And it's become this big thing with me in the industry, because a lot of people, I'm in the minority. I understand that a lot of people find him funny. I get it. Like I'm, if you want to say that I'm wrong, I guess I'm wrong. I'll die on the hill. But it's just one of those things where most of the industry just thinks that he's like the best thing ever. And I'm like, it's really not. Christmas Vacation is a terrible movie. I've watched it forcefully the last 2 years. I do want to shout out Joe Grow of Quality Importers, formerly of Drew Estate, who's in his fun, every Thanksgiving, he starts this tradition. He'll roast me on Facebook every day. He'll post a picture or a quote or something from that atrocious movie, egging this whole thing on. And then it kind of all comes to a head where a group of us get together and watch the movie, myself included. And the reason why I say a shout out to Joe Grow for it, no, I hate the fact that I have to watch the film, but we've turned this tragedy into a beautiful case for charity. People will actually pay money to the charity of my choice to sit down and watch this abomination of a film with me and watch me squirm and just be disgusted the whole time, because it's just not funny whatsoever. I've enjoyed getting together for those viewings, not for the movie in its slightest whatsoever, but because of the
tradition all by itself. Huh?
Yes, the individuals who contribute. I'm grateful for the money to the charity I have chosen the last 2 years is Canines for Warriors. I'm a son of a veteran, and I'm also a dog lover, and that organization has done tremendous work for our veterans in this country. And I'm proud to support it, and it genuinely warms my heart that my friends and enemies will sit together and watch me squirm and donate money to this charity of my choice.
Very cool.
Bear, but at least on Fletch, he was not that bad.
Can I jump in real quick? Sorry,
if by
Bear,
not
I'm
that
a huge
bad.
Paul Simon fan. My kid's named Simon, Simone, well, that and Bolivar, this guy. But will you at least admit that Chevy Chase in the music video of Paul Simon's "You Can Call Me Al"? I don't know if you've seen that is at least very funny, and that is good. Sorry.
I think Paul Simon is an incredible, talented individual, and he could have picked about 20,000 other people to do the same job, if not better.
But he couldn't, because Chevy Chase did it on his own, is improv spontaneously, I believe, when they were behind the set on SNL. So you gotta look. I think you should at least give him 1 point for that.
No, great.
How do you feel about Vegas Vacation?
I think it's one step better than Christmas Vacation, because at least it's in Vegas.
And Fletch?
Tell you what, Jose, this is what I'll tell you what I'll give you. I think Fletch is the best movie that Chevy Chase has done, which is basically saying it's a piece of garbage instead of a pile of garbage.
Okay.
So Bear, well, we got that one out of the way, and Joe, many thanks for bringing it up. And indeed, it's becoming quite a nice tradition. So Joe just wrote over in the chat box that year 3 is coming in hot. We're looking forward to that, Bear.
I'm terrified, because I actually met him last year. That was the thing that we forgot. So one of the things that happened, Joe orchestrated the ability for me to actually meet Chevy Chase in person. Well, virtually anyway. I got a 2-minute interview with him, essentially, where I got to ask anything I wanted. And I got what I did get out. It wasn't 2 minutes is a very short amount of time, but what I did get out was the fact that I did not find him funny, and he called me a little shit. So at least we had that honest exchange, at least before it cut us off.
Bear, I said at the beginning, we want to be most respectful with your treasured time today. It's your birthday. I'm sure you've got plenty of way more wonderful obligations today with the family and your beloved ones. than spending time on the Light 'em Up Lounge with us, though. However, after talking so much about cigar media, I very briefly, before we wrap things up, want to tap a little bit into your palate and your ability to share with the other cigar enthusiasts not only your perception but a very great estimation of what the cigar can provide. How do you work on your palate? How did you develop it, and where do you feel like you have that extra taste bud here or there to disassemble things and share your opinion with other people thereafter?
So, sorry for the interruption, Reinhard, but I have to say something. When I was with Ernesto and the Encore came out, he smoked it. And Coop is on this call. And he told me, Jose, that you know how hard it is to predict the #1 cigar of the year? And he picked it out. That's how good his palate is.
That cigar is absolutely incredible. That would also go in my Humidor Macy as well.
I actually had that one last night, just as a random, just metaphysical connection I knew we always had. But
to answer the question, Reinhard, I think that I don't think I have a secret formula or anything to developing my palate. I was always, when I was a kid, I was forced to eat a lot of things that I didn't like. And then I found out that I liked them. And so it kind of started there. I was one of the weird kids. I remember this like tomorrow. And I don't know what the hell was wrong with me when I was a child, but for some reason I didn't like mashed potatoes when I was a little kid. And I think it clicked for me when I was about 7 or 8 years old at Thanksgiving dinner. And I was like, okay, my parents were like, you're going to try it again. And I tried it, and then I absolutely loved it. And I don't know what the heck was wrong with me before that, because mashed potatoes became my world for 2 straight years. But I think that was kind of the light bulb moment for me, that like things aren't always going to taste the same. And you should always try something. So I think that's something that my parents instilled in me. And so like, I was always willing to try something. I'll eat anything, provided that it's, safe, relatively speaking. I mean, Camacho had that promotion a while back where they were sending out scorpions to eat, and I gladly ate it. It tasted like extraordinarily dry beef jerky. There wasn't much to it, but it, it was interesting nonetheless. The texture was kind of nice, but it kind of developed from there, and I got into cooking. And then through college, I ate poorly like every college kid, but I also wanted to do more. So I started experimenting with just college foods, everything from ramen to pizza to different things, trying to make something taste better than it actually was. And then I got a job at, for all intents and purposes, is a glamorous grocery store here in Texas. It's called Central Market. It's similar to Trader Joe's or Whole Foods if you live in this country. Similar to most European markets, actually, Reinhard. So, I mean, you probably would go in and be like, oh, this is exactly what, we have, except for not as cool, because the Europeans have grocery shopping down to a science, and it's phenomenal. But at least from the fresh ingredient perspective. And so I started there, and, I became what's called a foodie. It was so basically you were a product specialist. You walked around the store and customers would ask you questions, much like a tobacconist in a humidor, and be like, hey, I need to make this. How do I make it? Or I'm looking for this. Where is this? Or I'm looking for this. What is that? And they'll hand you a recipe. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. And so I learned so much about different foods from around the world because of the type of store that I worked in. And then I went back behind the scenes, and I worked in the kitchen, and I worked upstairs in the cooking school. And so I've eaten a lot of different things in my life, and I kind of carried that over to cigar smoking when I became 18, and I just started smoking a lot of different cigars, and I kept trying to find different things, and I started learning more about different tobaccos. And then I started deconstructing tobaccos and looking at deconstructing cigars and taking a look at the tobacco, and I would roll makeshift fumas, and I would smoke the tobacco and see what I was actually getting out of it. And I mean, I'll never, Jose's going to chuckle at this if he's still on. I'll never compare tobacco flavor to something that I haven't had. AKA manure, or something like that of that nature. But um, I will say that something tastes like I am. And so I have been criticized for like things that I characterize flavors of cigars simply because it's very, very specific. Like the Steve Saka's Todos los Dias, the Dunbarton tobacco truck, Todos los Dias, like there is a chili pepper flavor in there that is very specific. It's Fresno chili. It's not Anaheim, it's not jalapeno, it's not Serrano. It is a Fresno chili note in that cigar. I can just tell you that's what it is because my grandmother made Spanish rice using chopped up Fresno chilies. And I know what Fresno chilies taste like. And that's what it tastes like when I smoke that cigar. And so I relate things, and flavor and aroma is so nostalgic. It triggers everything. Everyone remembers what their grandmother's living room smells like. Everyone remembers what their mother's pancakes taste like. Good, bad, or in the middle, they remember it. It's ingrained in us as human beings to identify flavor and aroma. And it brings back, it triggers all the other senses. You can hear your mother's voice. You can see your grandmother, turning the rice ever so delicately because you don't want to over stir rice because then it becomes hard instead of fluffy when you're cooking it. There are things that are very triggering in your memory from taste and aroma. And that's again, I've gone on and on here, but that's how I developed my palate. Was I just wanted more. And so I just kept consuming it until I figured stuff out.
That is absolutely fantastic, and I couldn't agree more with me. First of all, I'm a synesthete, so I always think in holistic experiences. And when I try a particular cigar, every cigar to me has a soundtrack or a tactile, a certain haptics sensation, visuals, and all that kind of stuff. And you're also spot on with the way our brain works and how it takes those sensory information and puts them together, how the limbic system is in charge of putting a more holistic picture to everything, and it so deeply links with our emotions and with our memories. That's what's so fascinating about this and why it's so deeply engraved in our DNA. And I believe that's a part why something like cigars and things like soul food, if there's even that term, right, is so close to our heart and has such a deep meaning to a lot of us. So absolutely agreed. Wonderful. And regarding the little puros, I think that is an experience that probably quite a few of the cigar enthusiasts are missing unless they've been to one of the factories. And even for people who are in the industry professionally, it's hard to get that experience, right? To taste pure grade tobacco and have a chance to train your brain to get like pure Ligero, Seco, Viso from different tobacco seeds and put that in your library, put that in your memory. And I would hope that more people would have the chance to experience that and thus train their palate a little bit, because it's hard to get by, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to it. Like if you want to be a student of something, then be a student of it. If you want to be the guy or girl who goes into your local tobacco shop and picks up a Don Carlos every time you go, I mean, that's not the worst thing in the world to do. If that's the cigar you want to smoke, then that's the cigar you want to smoke. And there's nothing wrong with that. And for that matter, I mean, it's okay if you want to be the person, smoking a bundle cigar, but, as long as they don't try to wax philosophically about tobacco, then I'm okay with it. They like what they like, so, but.
Bear, final question in regards to that. How do you keep track of things? Did you start taking notes very early on when you smoked cigars, or is it something that just comes naturally and those cross links and references to past memories of scents and other tastes just come easily to you?
I think there's a little column A and column B there. So I'm in my studio right now, but I'm also in my garage. And I'll tell you that there's about 3 boxes over here to my left. Maybe they're in the attic now, but there's 3 boxes that are filled with notebooks from college. these notebooks were very simply filled with labels of cigars and my initial thoughts on them. So yeah, I did a lot of writing when I originally started smoking because I wanted to remember. And then, you know, genetically speaking, my father passed on one of the most wonderful traits to me, as I have a very, very good memory. It's, you know, it's often referred to as ironclad. And I remember the most random things. And I've always been blessed with a terrific memory, and my father was as well. My father's recall was very excellent. It's probably why I have such a kindred spirit in Coop. Coop is very similar in that regard. He has a very identical memory to a lot of different facets. He's a very fascinating man in that aspect, and I admire him in a lot of aspects because his recall over certain things that even I don't know is very impressive, and he reminds me a lot of my father that way. Coop's like a big brother to me. So, but you know, and then in life's greatest tragedies, right? You know, turn about a little bit. You know, my father, unfortunately, the last few years has been certainly suffering from dementia and Alzheimer's, and so to see one of the greatest gifts that he ever bestowed upon me to be slowly taken away from him is probably one of the saddest things that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. It's one of life's real cruelties, I gotta tell you. But I think that that's honestly where it is. It's just a blessing that I have, and you know, I use it. And if you don't use what you're blessed with, I think that's an even greater tragedy.
Amen. What a tremendous statement and a great way to finish today's show. Bear, first of all, I would love to thank you from heart, not only for joining us today, but for everything that you do on a daily and weekly basis for the cigar industry, for the cigar community. You do a tremendous job, and I greatly treasure and respect your contribution to this industry, together with the people that you mentioned, Ben Lee, William Cooper, the folks over at Cigar Dojo, Aaron Loomis, the entire coalition, the Smoking Syndicate. There's a great bunch of people in this industry, around this industry, and you are a shining light of the cigar media landscape. And I've been following your work and your journey ever since I entered this industry, or got some sort of an interest in cigars. So thank you for that. And
thank you. It's very humbling. I appreciate it.
And it comes from heart. It truly does. And keep it up. Keep up the amazing work, and share such inspiring conversations and in-depth information. And besides, have a stellar and most joyful birthday celebration today. Again, thanks in particular for taking the time out of that one day of the year. So it was an absolute pleasure and a blast to have you today on the 26th of October. Happy birthday to you, Bear Duplisea, and many, many thanks for being on the Light 'em Up Lounge. It was
I appreciate it. Have a great
Thanks,
one.
Bear. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday again. Good night.